Ya estoy live. Perfecto. A ver, vamos a esperar que lleguen personas. We'll wait for people to come join. Great. Hello! How are you, Shay? Hey, Trish. Angelo, hola. Hey, how's it going, Victoria? It's great to see so many of you guys. I'm so glad that this festival could be compiled and organized to create this feeling of solidarity in these weird, strange times. So I'm so glad for all of you to come join. I'm AJ Wildey, as most of you know, originally from New Jersey, but I moved to Peru 6 years ago now. I founded El Cacaotal in 2017, and for those who haven't had the chance to come visit us in Lima yet, El Cacaotal is a library dedicated to Peruvian chocolate. Our mission in life is to bring together as many different brands of Peruvian chocolate as we can, sourced from all over Peru. We work directly with the farmers and the chocolate makers. And as an anthropologist, the idea behind the store is to share the stories of the people behind the chocolate while eating the chocolate, and also promoting the future of Peruvian craft chocolate. Unfortunately, we're not open right now, which is why I'm broadcasting from a considerably more boring scenario. I would have loved to have you guys at the shop so you can see our collection live, but maybe once Peru comes out of its lockdown quarantine, maybe we can do another gathering where we can do a behind-the-scenes tour of the shop. I think that would be really fun. Yes, sad times. But that's okay because we have chocolate with us, and when there's chocolate, everything is better. So I hope you're all staying safe, and I hope your chocolate supply is not running low. What I'd love to talk with you about today is Peruvian craft chocolate. The boom that we're experiencing, what that's meant for the farmers and chocolate makers working up to this moment, and what we can see in the future for Peruvian craft chocolate. So many of you going to some of the different international chocolate fairs might have gotten to see some of the Peruvian chocolate makers, gotten to meet them, but maybe you'll notice that their presence hasn't been as noted until about 5 years ago. We really started experiencing our Peruvian chocolate boom in 2015. That was when Peru won its first International Chocolate World gold medal, and that was kind of the decisive moment that catalyzed the Peruvian chocolate growth. And it's been really cool to see how in such a short period of time we've had so many incredibly talented people join the Peruvian bean-to-bar craft chocolate scene. Today El Cacaotal has got about 40 different brands that we work with, about 200 bars in total in our library, and when people come visit us, it's amazing for them to see that all of this has cropped up just within the past 5 years. So it's been a really exciting time for them to come by and get to know us, but also to share this chocolate with more people. So a little bit about me. I'm an anthropologist by profession, chocolate eater, lover by birth, and I brought those two passions together in 2017 when I presented my master's thesis on alternative development options in the Peruvian Central Amazon. And so what I was looking at was how these programs are intervening in areas that had previously been prone to a lot of narco-trafficking conflict with the sowing and harvesting of the coca leaf, which is the plant base for cocaine. And so resuming about 30 years of history, the Peruvian government and also alternative development international programs have started intervening as a way to offer farmers an opportunity to ditch the illicit crop of coca and sow cacao. And what I saw after doing this research for 3 years, since 2013 really, was that we were winning all these awards left and right, but there was no place centralized and specialized for Peruvian chocolate. And so I opened El Cacaotal with that in mind, this idea of having a library for people to come and get to try the different Peruvian chocolates and really learn the stories behind each of the bars. So craft chocolate in Peru, as I mentioned, really only 5 years that we've been living this boom, and it has been a bright and hotly burning star in these last 5 years. What I want to talk about today while we're here is what it's been like for the Peruvian craft chocolate movement throughout the past 5 years and what it means for Peruvian chocolate in the future. So after we had our big win 2015 with our first international award, we've had these different players come to the scene experimenting with different origins. the thing about Peru is that it's such a diverse country that we have so many cacao origins to choose from. When people come visit us at El Cacaotal, we help them pick out their chocolate bars, we have them samples, and we'll talk a little about that process later. But when they're ready to go, we make them a personalized map like this to accompany all of their chocolates. So you can see on this map, all of the yellow area is cacao producing zones, and it's pretty much the entire country. Cacao can be found in 14 of Peru's 24 different departments, so really the entire country is covered in cacao. And beyond square footage covered by cacao, we've also got a lot of different zones. So in the eastern part of Peru, we have hot, humid, soupy, dense, low jungle where the cacao is bathed in humidity and heat pretty much 24/7. We've also got cacao growing in the central part of Peru along the eastern facing slopes of the Andes where the mountains trick down to the lowland jungle. These regions are subjected to a lot of thermal shocks, so you have warmth during the day and a lot of cold temperatures at night, which really have an interesting effect on the flavor of the cacao. And then we have our coastal cacao. The coastal cacao has been a genetically isolated region, but it's probably one of our most famous regions. And it's funny because the coastal region is a desert, where the northwest part of Peru is hot, arid, maybe rains 4 months out of the year, so a lot of farmers have to install irrigation systems to make sure that the thirsty cacao crop is appropriately fed. But when a lot of people worldwide think of Peruvian cacao, it's usually synonymous with this region, and one region in particular, Piura. The first activity I want to do with you guys today is show how cacao can express different flavors, which the majority of you already know, of course, but I wanted to get into really nerdy nuance of how even cacao coming from one region can have different flavors to it. So I chose 2 bars. We have one Maraná. They're 70% Piura bar. Maraná is probably familiar to a lot of you. It was one of our first really large-scale chocolate brands from bean to bar crafted. And this is one of their classic bars, and it also has a very classic flavor profile. Then we've got the bar from Tree Bar, another bean to bar brand, a little bit newer to the scene. They're actually a tree to bar brand, but this is one bean to bar iteration that's part of their collection. And so to show you and illustrate the different flavors of these chocolate bars, we're recurring to our flavor wheels. So these are averages of the flavors that you can experience for each region, and we'll talk a little bit more about these flavor wheels and how we use them at our shop. But for now, I want you to see how we contrasted the 2 bars. So this flavor wheel here relates to the bar from Maraná. Piura on a whole can be described in 3 basic descriptors. You've got a sweet flavor, and the sweet can vary between honey, molasses, milky flavor, brown sugar. Then you've also got a dried fruit flavor, which can go anywhere from like a purple raisin, which is most common, to something more like a date or a fig or maybe even a prune. And then the last characteristic is more of like a citrusy, fruity tang, a fresh fruit tang. You can see it as like a lemon lime flavor or maybe more like a sweet plum. If any of you have tried Piura chocolate before, you'll know. Feel free to comment any of your favorite brands that have used Piura cacao, or if you've even tried any of the brands we're talking about today. So this flavor wheel from Maraná is a more classic iteration of Piura. It starts off with a very sweet honey flavor, almost with like a little milky buttery underneath. Then it moves into like a woodsy territory, almost like a cedar flavor. And this is a really great way to get someone who's maybe not as adventurous into craft chocolate to see that you really can have all these different flavors without adding cedar or honey to the chocolate. For the dried fruit, it's almost got more of a date flavor that is reminiscent of the figgy flavor, the woody flavor that we can get out of it. And then it ends with an almost, in Peru we call them aguaimanto. I think they're ground cherries in North America and in Europe. And so a really interesting, diverse bar, but without a flavor that will really grab you and kind of shake you. That's where the Tree Bar differs. This is one of our best sellers at the store. It's a really exotic bar, but this one starts off with more of like a brown sugar flavor, then moves into a raisin prune undertone, maybe a little bit of like a red currant, and then finishes with a huge lemon lime burst. So it's a really juicy bar, and this one is fun to have people try to show them how much chocolate doesn't taste like chocolate, what they usually think of chocolate. So those are some of the fun activities that we do when people come visit us at the store. We've got a Narnia closet of samples for almost all of our 200 bars. And the first thing we ask our visitors is, what kind of chocolate do you like? Usually they'll be able to say if they like milk chocolate or dark chocolate, and then based on that we'll ask them to define dark chocolate. Is it 70%? Is it 80%? And then we'll pick a few samples to have them try from these different percentage profiles. So we can do one, let's say a nutty, woodsy, herbal one, more brown notes. We'll pick them out, maybe a tangy, fruity one like the tree bar to see how extreme their palate will go. And then we'll also do maybe more of like a dried fruit spices bar. And this way they'll have the full spectrum of flavors and see where their tastes line up to more or less. What we like to do then is help them, like a chocolate detective, pick out their favorite bars and make recommendations based on those points. And one of the major factors behind these differences in the versatility of the flavors is the fact that Peru is such a richly genetically diverse country for cacao, which is one of the reasons that Peru often throws its hat in the ring of possible contenders for the coveted title of Origins of Cacao. There's an unprecedented amount of genetic diversity in Peru. 60% of the varieties of cacao are found in Peru, and that really generates this rich array of flavors. Pairing that with the incredible diversity of the climates, like we talked about a little bit earlier, he's chocolate detective, that really makes us a very versatile origin country. That's what's also led us to have to come to a second iteration of our flavor wheels. These first drafts were done in 2016 by Marcelo Gutierrez, and like I mentioned, they're averages of cacao from each of the regions. They were all sampled and then came to a general descriptor. But since 2016, there's been a lot of work looking at different kinds of cacao, different genetics, and that's led to us having to put a different spin on these wheels and redo them, taking into account the new generations and genetics of cacao being discovered. We had a question about cadmium. Peru, unfortunately, is a region hit hard by cadmium. That in and of itself could be a 40-minute talk. If you're interested in talking more about it later, please feel free to write me, but my own personal take on the issue is that the cadmium problem is more of a political side of things. To my knowledge, I haven't read any studies talking about what limits of cadmium are harmful to human bodies, what the level of absorption of cadmium is. And if you really look at the politics established by the EU, the limits that they allow on cadmium for other products like rice and potatoes are just as high, if not higher, than the limits imposed on chocolate. In other words, you're allowed to consume more cadmium in rice and potatoes, but chocolate has been punished a lot more. From my anthropological, socially radical perspective, I look at that and I look at where the competition for the historically key producers of cacao are, being the Ivory Coast and Ghana, and what colonial ties there are to the European Union and what interest there could be on behalf of the EU to bolster the exporting and the business side for their Western African countries and weaken the Latin American producing countries like Brazil, Peru, and Ecuador. But definitely the cadmium studies are something that need to be done, and they form a way of mapping even better the soil composition of origin countries. I know there's been a lot of work doing soil mapping throughout Peru, and I think that will only help us bolster our cacao flavors and the different origins and profiles that we can offer as a country. So a way to make lemonade out of lemons. Hooray for anthropologists, yes. Okay, so speaking of anthropology, actually, perfect segue. We talked a little about the different flavors that we can find in cacao, and we're doing a lot of flavor mapping, exploring different origins, seeing what farmers have. A lot of times people will bring us small batches of beans to El Cacaotal, and we have a little mini lab set up. So we'll do a sample roasting profile. We have a tabletop melanger, and we'll grind it down and see what kind of flavors can come out of these beans that people haven't really been working with before. One of the origins that has me most excited is the south of Peru, Ayacucho, Junín, and Cusco. They form a little triangle called the Vrime, and it's instead of like a state, more like this geographic region, and there's a lot of native cacao growing there that hasn't really been studied yet. I want to recognize the incredible effort of the Tree to Bar movement. Tree to Bar is possibly one of my favorite themes ever. Sidebar, would love to talk to people from other origin and growing countries about what the definition of tree de bar is. We've had a few cases here in Peru that, given a lack of specificity of what tree de bar is, there's really no go-to sanctioned definition of tree de bar, and some people are talking about, hey, we're tree de bar because we kind of comply with these sections, but in the end they don't end up being tree de bar. So I think it would be really cool to have a collaborative group effort of pulling together what counts and what doesn't count as tree de bar to really protect the initiatives of the people who are living, breathing tree de bar brands. Here I've picked out a few of our tree de bar brands to talk about today. We have Tree Bar. I mentioned them at the beginning. This is their pewter bar, but they have 9 bars that they make from their own cacao in Ucayali. We have Nina, neighbors to them. They're based in Chasuta, San Martin, and Miroshnik, based in Ayacucho in the south of Peru. And this particular bar is one of the bars that I was mentioning when I said how interesting it's becoming for the flavor wheels and the different genetics that we're uncovering. This bar was really engineered about a year ago, and it brought to the forefront flavors that people never knew could exist in Ayacucho, because the family behind the Miroshnik bar are using native cacaos that were growing wild on the land that they owned. And so this bar is such an exotic flavor. It starts off with like a malty flavor, then moves into this blackberry mint, and finishes with a zesty grapefruit flavor. And this is amazing to see how all these flavors can come jam-packed in this cacao that no one really knew about until the Miroshnik family started working with this cacao about a year ago. So both Miroshnik and Nina are examples of 2 tree de bar brands that are elaborated 100% on their farm. They're people who are sleeping on the farm. Nina, in their case, you have to go 45 minutes downstream on this little public boat to get to their farm, and then you bring it back to their house once the cacao has been harvested and depulped, and there, under their bedroom window, they have their fermentation station and drying racks. It's amazingly yummy, and it really makes you appreciate all the effort that goes into their processes. I had the opportunity with my coffee partner to visit Nina out in Chasuta in August, and we have a little surprise about that visit for the end of the presentation, so stay tuned. Now, when we talk about the tree de bar brands, it's been a really interesting way to bridge the general consumer with the chocolate world. And we've talked a little bit about the side of the chocolate makers in the Peruvian chocolate boom, and now I want to slightly switch gears and talk about the consumers. So there's been an increase in appreciation for Peruvian chocolate locally. I always talk about how when I opened Cacaotal in 2017, we would have people come in and they'd say, oh, well, what is this, a chocolate store? Well, my brother-in-law lives in Switzerland, so, I get my chocolate from Switzerland because European chocolate is the best. And that was the stereotype that Peru had been living with since forever. Up until about 10 years ago, you could count on one hand the amount of viable, tasty chocolate options made in Peru. The majority was imported. And so we had this kind of mentality, again, anthropology, take this mentality in Peru that the outside is better, and what you can import from Europe and North America is going to be better than anything you can find in Peru. But curiously, Peru's been experiencing this gastronomy revolution the past 20 years, where people have been getting more and more excited about Peruvian foods, Peruvian dishes, Peruvian ingredients. And luckily, in the past 5 years, again, as Peru chocolate is winning awards and gaining a lot of international attention, that same excitement for Peruvian ingredients has been transferred to the Peruvian cacao and chocolate. And so we've seen the same kind of attitude in a lot of origin countries. Brazil, the same, Ecuador, the same, Mexico. And that's why the tree de bar movement is getting me really excited, because it's the origin countries' turn to say, look at what our farmers are doing, and taste how amazing it is. I had the opportunity in January to go visit Carla Martin with the FCCI up at Harvard in January with my coffee partner, and we did chocolate and coffee pairings with tree de bar chocolates, and people were amazed at how amazing the flavors were, and how long a way the chocolate makers had come to really hone their skills and get the fermentation just right to present these flavors. So that's another thing to take into account when you buy a chocolate bar. It's the story behind it. And for the tree de bar brands, they now have this vertical integration. They control all the steps, which means they have have even better quality control, or more resources for quality control, I guess you should say. And then they also get to be the ones who decide their story and how they want to present themselves on their packagings, or if they have the chance to go to the different festivals. So with our Tree to Bar trend, we've seen the Peruvians getting excited and wanting to take chocolate from Peru to go visit their brother-in-law who lives in Switzerland. So they would come back to the store a few months later and say, right, I'm going to visit them. I want to bring a suitcase full of Peruvian chocolate to show them how amazing it is. So in Peru, we are seeing this rejuvenation of the chocolate fans and people who are getting excited about Peruvian chocolate. The next part, it's got slight gray cloud on the horizon. Peruvians are not a big chocolate consuming culture, so we've kind of, in the past 5 years of really unrestricted boom growth in the chocolate world, we've kind of hit a ceiling, and it's caused a lot of chocolate makers to have to get creative to kind of stay competitive in the market. One strategy has been for the chocolate makers to really look at their sales and see which have been the most popular chocolate bars and which editions maybe weren't as well received with the public, and kind of ditch those less popular editions. But one of my favorite ways and favorite strategies of these chocolate makers has been makeovers. And in the past few years, we've seen a lot of really incredible kind of revamping of the styles of the different chocolates. For instance, Miroshnik, the brand that we were just talking about, the Tree to Bar brand based in Ayacucho, when they launched back in 2017, this was their aesthetic. They wanted to incorporate a lot of the jungle area they were working in. They also have a lot of different plants, different species of flowers and fruit-giving trees and animals that grow and roam their fields. And so they wanted to incorporate some of the flora and fauna on their packaging. Then, about a year later, they changed. They transformed, adding just a few different switches and details. The flower's still there, the plant is still there, but it's a more homogeneous, a more uniform, it's got more flow to it. And it was funny because once they revamped their bar, we had them on the shelves, and people who'd been coming in for a year, our local customers, would come by and say, oh, this is a new chocolate bar, you didn't have them before. And, you know, really, we did have them, it just didn't grasp your attention. So as chocolate makers are trying to vie for the attention of the customer, they've been starting to get this creative. And one of my all-time favorite makeovers goes to Tree Bar. The Pewter bar we looked at in the beginning, if you remember them. Now, what if I told you that when Tree Bar started back in 2015, 2016, they started like this? This is, I always share this before and after with people who walk away with Tree Bar because it's so radical, so drastic. And it's amazing to see how, okay, we had some gold leaf, not really well distributed, and then boom, you maintain the gold leaf, you spread out a little bit more. They even changed their name, and they incorporated the motifs of the Shipibo design. The Shipibo is an indigenous group that lives in Ucayali, where their Tree to Bar farm is based, and people are amazed. The orientation is different, and it really grabs everyone's attention, and they're really impressed when they see the drastic before and after. Another way that the chocolate makers are grabbing people's attentions is by using another slightly undervalued part of the package. So our last transformation is Kuma. It's not as drastic of a transformation on the outside. They've maintained the rectangle, the placement of the logo is the same. They've added some more designs along the package, but all in all, it's pretty much the same. But Kuma became one of our first brands to start using the inside of the packaging. So I always have a box. This is my chocolate smudge. Oops, I ate it. But Kuma shows where Peru is within South America, where the cacao comes from within Peru, and also has a great part where they talk about their partnership with the chocolate, with the cacao producers. So a huge dramatic change and a really cool way for people to feel like they're getting an extra value. And today that we have this wealth of chocolate options to choose from, some people, beyond choosing for flavor, are choosing based on what the packaging can offer them. This has been a really popular option for gifts. In fact, Kuma also launched a gift line. This is her classic line. Her gift line has this really amazing, I wish you could feel, this beautiful old, like stationary, I don't know, like papyrus paper. And then she's actually even incorporated a spider web over here, a flavor map, and she's asked people, she left it blank for people to fill out their own flavor notes. And this has been a really cool idea for gifts for people who want to give it an experience with the amazing tasting chocolate. Okay, so the last bar that I want to share with you today is by Nina. Again, our Treat a Bar brand based in Jesuita that has their cacao fermenting under their bedroom window, drying. You can just imagine waking up every day to the smell of drying cacao. Nina has gone an extra mile in wanting to transport people to origin. So when usually people have to wait till they get home to see what's inside the Nina bar, but I want to share it with you today as we talk about the leaps and bounds of Peruvian craft chocolate makers. So Nina, as I mentioned, is based in Jesuita, San Martin, the central jungle of San Martin. And the area they're based in is actually famous for their ceramics historically. So Nina has taken that inspiration and applied it to their mold, where you can see there are these hexagon shapes that are inspired by the motifs from the pottery, and even, I'll hold it really close, there are these waves on the inside that are designs that you'll often see on the ceramic culture found on the pots and vessels in Jesuita. And so this is another way, also ideal for tastings because everyone gets their own little hexagon. A really cool way to transport people beyond the amazing tasting chocolate to a little bit of the identity of the area in which the cacao is grown. And then the cherry on the cake is the surprise that comes with the bar. In every bar, it's like a Cracker Jack version of chocolate, there's a picture of something from the area where Nina grows their cacao. So Luz and Oliver have 2 going on 3 photo collections, and they pick scenes either with the cacao beans, the animals, the flowers, the cacao fermenting, the different colors of the pods. And the idea is to have people go home with this insider view of what cacao looks like, really. A lot of people, when they see chocolate, never think that it comes from a bean, not to mention this like lime green lizard-looking pod. And so it's really going a long way to have this educational aspect incorporated in everything related to the cacao. If you want to share an experience you've had with Peruvian chocolate or something that's really wowed you, feel free. But I wanted to start wrapping up talking about this idea that chocolate is more than just something that's delicious to eat. It definitely is. And the chemical effects it has on your body are undeniable. That nice cocktail of theobromine and caffeine, but also this idea that it generates serotonin, so we are happy and peppy all the time. And then it even goes beyond the craft world of looking at how you can have amazing flavors like dates and lemons in your chocolate. What the Peruvian chocolate scene is starting to do is moving towards the farmer-centered and person-based relationship with chocolate. And it's beyond how you like the flavor of the chocolate, but more about who's behind it. And you can feel this affinity with Luz and Oliver, or with Alex and Diana, or with Sergio and Melissa from Tree Bar. You get to know who's behind your bar, and it makes it really exciting when you share the bar, because not only are you sharing the flavor but the story. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really feel free to reach out anytime. I hope that soon the quarantine will be lifted from Peru and I'll be able to get back into the shop and do another live session touring behind the scenes of the shop. But if nothing less, really check where your origins are from your cacao. As we all know, the more the packaging can tell you about who and where it comes from, the more likely the farmers are getting a better cut of the value add of the chocolate. And that's what we want. We want to feel good about the chocolate we're eating because we want it to taste good, and we want to know that it supports families who are working so hard to get this amazing tasting chocolate in your hands. So thank you so much. Can't wait to talk soon. Can't wait to see you all at the shop if you're ever in Peru. And please feel free to write me at all with any questions of Peruvian chocolate and the Treat a Bar movement. So thanks guys, take care, stay safe, and eat chocolate.